A few years ago, I had a 2-week engagement out in Arizona, in Phoenix. And I had to be on site for those 2 weeks. And I have a friend from college that lives there, and we hadn't seen each other for like 30 years. And so I reached out to her and I said, hey, I'm going to be out there, and let's get together over the weekend. We had so much fun. We went out to eat. We went to a movie. We did some shopping. We just looked at old yearbooks. It was just so great. On Monday, the second week, I got a call from my credit card company telling me that, well, actually, it was kind of like they said, are you using your credit card in Las Vegas? Is what they asked. And they didn't actually say this, but I think it's funny. And I said, no. And they said, well, somebody is. You know, they didn't actually say it that way, but I think it's funnier. So there's nobody at Visa just sitting there looking at all these charges, trying to find problems. You know, they're using computers. They're using this thing called machine learning to spot these abnormalities or these outliers that are, you know, say, hey, this doesn't look right. You know, they're not always correct. I spent a whole week in Hawaii, and then the very last day I was there, they decided I wasn't in Hawaii and started like saying, you know, I had to call in and say, yes, this is fine. I'm really here. I've been here all week. So it's not always right. But I appreciate it. I really appreciate it, because somebody was using my card in Las Vegas, and I did not have to pay those charges because they flagged it and we got it all taken care of. You've seen this all week. Please silence your cell phones. Please, I feel like every time I turn my head a little bit, it goes out. Please silence your cell phones. Please be respectful to those around you and the rest of the people in the room. If you get a call, please leave. You know, if you have to have a loud conversation with your neighbor, please take it out in the hallway. Pass is amazing. Pass has completely changed my life. There's so many cool things. SQL Saturdays, anybody go to SQL Saturdays? A few of you. The rest of you, don't think about going to a SQL Saturday, just go. Don't even think about it, just do it. Sign up, so great. Lots and lots of free content. I'm actually a virtual chapter leader, or virtual group leader now, is what they call it. So there's tons of free content. Pass is just amazing. My name is Kathi Kellenberger. I have been a database administrator and a developer, and now I am an editor at Redgate. So some of you probably are familiar with Redgate, and I'm the editor now. I've been for 2 years the editor of SimpleTalk. The most important thing on that slide is that I am a lifelong learner, and I love to teach others what I know. I mentioned I'm co-leader of a virtual chapter. I'm also a data platform MVP, and that's just because I do a lot of things for the community, and I like attention. So I let people know that the things that I do. Be sure to fill out session evaluations. I gave a session 1 year. There were 400 people in the room, and there were about 30 people that filled it out. So we need those session evaluations. There's a chance for a prize, plus it really helps us. If you think I did a terrible job today, that's okay. This must be the worst microphone placement I've ever had. I barely have to move my head. I don't know if to go down or up. I'll go down and see if that helps. If you hate me today, that's your prerogative, but don't fill that eval out saying that unless you have some constructive criticism. I may learn something very valuable from you, and then I can apply that later. And I've noticed, especially when I was early in my speaking career, people writing things, they didn't necessarily hate me, but they had lots of constructive criticism that I applied later on. Don't say something silly like someone did, I think last year or the year before, and they said something like, she's a scatterbrain. That was like, not useful. It might be true, but not useful. So what in the world is machine learning? So let me just back up for a second. What in the world is this session about? Why am I talking about this? I did not say at the beginning that I was a data scientist, did I? I am not. 2 years ago, I began studying the data science curriculum that Microsoft had out on edX. Did anybody hear about that? They had all kinds of wonderful classes you could take, like beginning programming. Data science was the first one. All kinds of wonderful programs. And unfortunately, a few months ago, we got the notification that those are going away. They're going away next month. And if you were already in one, you could finish it up, but it's done. And I loved it so much. I was working on it 2 years ago when I was looking for a job, and that was one of the things that I thought I might be able to do, is work on a data science team. With my SQL skills that I have, I thought I can go in on a team, I can be the SQL person, and I can start learning what the data scientists do. That didn't really work out. I got this job at Redgate, so kind of good. But I just was so excited about some of the things that I learned. I thought there are probably other people that maybe are like me but aren't lucky enough to work for Redgate. And so I said, I'm going to create a session and go around and show people these absolutely amazing tools out on Azure to get you started with machine learning, data science. And, because today, show of hands, who are DBAs in the room? There's a few, maybe about 20%, and developers. And so a few more. How many are actually data scientists? So we get some data scientists in here, even though it's 101, so you can tell me what I'm doing wrong. So that's okay. So part of the idea is that I wanted to show data scientists some of the cool tools that are out there they might want to use for prototyping, for example. But for other people, a way to just go out there and kind of dabble and play with the tools, because you might be thinking about, what's my next step? What's my 5-year plan? What's my 10-year plan? My particular skill set, may not be relevant in 10 years. So a lot of people that I know are looking at data science. So that's kind of the reason behind this. So with that said, and I think I'm just going to I'm going to move this chair back till I need it. So machine learning is nothing more than using these computer algorithms to find patterns in data and make predictions. That's kind of the simplistic version of what it means, okay? There's a lot more to it. There's a lot of different categories. The ones that I know about one is supervised learning. Regression means that I'm working with numbers on a continuum. I might be working with scores, or I might be working with temperatures, or I might be working with dollar amounts, prices. And I have all this data that I can look at, and I know the answer. So I have some data that I can use to train my machine learning algorithm. And once I have done that, then I can apply that to some data where I don't know the answer, and I can make predictions. Okay, so I have all this data about, let's see, for example, the price of cars based on how many wheels they have, how big the engine is, things like that. And I can just gather all this data, and then later when I have a car and I want to kind of guess what the price is going to be, I can use my algorithm that I came up with and see what the answer is. The other type of supervised learning is called classification. Classification is kind of like true, false, or I have 5 colors, and when I have this data that I'm going to train on, that I'm going to train my algorithm on, and then later when I show it maybe an image or something, or a color, it's going to be able to figure out what color it was. So it's very discrete things, very discrete, not like a continuum, like a number. Does that make sense? Okay. There's also unsupervised learning, and a couple that I know about are clustering and outliers. So clustering is basically you put a lot of data points together and you find like different areas of where things fit together. For example, I might have a protocol about like some illness. There's a protocol on how to treat patients, and maybe there's 3 different protocols, and how do I know which protocol to use for which patient? I might have a machine learning algorithm where every time I get a new patient, I figure out, which cluster they belong in, and that's what treatment they get. Outliers is another one. That would be possibly the credit card, where the credit card charge is unusual, something that doesn't go with the rest of the data. And there's also things like recommenders. Anybody watch Netflix? And they're really, really good at giving you suggestions on what you might like to watch next. So they know what you've liked in the past. They know what other people who have liked the same things like, that's in common with you. And if those people like some other thing, then chances are you will too. Pretty complicated, but that's another good example. So that's what machine learning is. So here's a little example. I have a bunch of 1s and 0s, true and false, and I might come up with an algorithm that divides the data like this. That's a pretty clean division there. If it falls on the left side of the screen, it's false. If it falls on the right side of the screen, it's true. So once I've trained my model on this known data, I might have some other data points that I throw in, and notice that some of those, I have a mistake. My model is not perfect. And your model should not be perfect. If your model is perfect, it means you've done this thing called overtraining. You've trained the model so closely to this data set that it's not going to work in the real world. So you will have some false positives and false negatives. When you're in regression, when you're trying to come up with a price, you're not going to come up with the exact price. You're going to come up with a ballpark. Here's one with linear regression. I have a bunch of data points, and I will come up with a line. So if you remember in high school, or maybe even middle school, y equals mx plus b, we come up with the formula of the line based on these data points. And in fact, we're just going to have like a kind of a little gray area. We expect that the information or the answer will be somewhere in that gray area. So if I have a value 10, I can check and find the y value, and it's probably going to be about 300. It's probably not going to be exactly 300, but it's probably going to be close to that. So this particular image I took from Introducing Azure Machine Learning by David Chappelle. I'm not sure how to say his name. I'm assuming that's still out there. There's been a lot of changes. It may even not be out there anymore, but I really love this graphic because a lot of database people, and there's lots of database people at this convention, so I'm assuming here as well, we are really, really good at getting data, pulling data, cleaning it. I did ETL for a year on one engagement. We're really, really good at that. People who are data scientists may not like that much. So on the left side of this is where a lot of data professionals live. On the right side is where the data scientists like to be. And they come up with algorithms. They have to keep checking, tweaking, try something else. Finally, they find something that they like, go ahead and deploy that, and then use it. So that was my idea. I could get on a data science team and do a lot of the work that they didn't like to do. That was my idea. Didn't pan out, but that's okay. There are many, many tools that you can use for data science. R and Python especially, just seems to be the really, really hot language right now. Really, really hot. And what's kind of crazy is that that's a language that's used a lot of times for teaching kids to learn how to program, or beginner programmers is Python. Because I hear someone say, well, they're just learning Python. And I'm like, well, that's like the hottest language around. So a lot of data scientists, that's what they use. I have used Python somewhat, but since I haven't been using it lately, I've kind of forgot it. I'm never going to forget T-SQL. I will be 90 years old in a nursing home, and I will still remember T-SQL, I think. May not remember the people around me. There is Visual F#. I have played with that a little bit. And so that's a Visual Studio language especially for machine learning. There is this thing called notebooks. Anybody playing with any notebooks, Jupyter notebooks? So a couple people. Jupyter notebooks are something that's really, really cool. What you can do is have the thing is, data scientists have used these for a long time because it was just really lent themselves for what they were doing. And now everybody's getting on board. There's documentation in these notebooks, and I will show you an example of one. Anybody familiar with Azure Data Studio, like the alternate to SQL Server Management Studio? You can do notebooks in there. You can do a SQL Server notebook. If I actually have time towards the end, I will show you that. So the cool thing about this is you can put blocks of documentation with formatting, and I'd have to go back. I haven't done a notebook in a couple of months, and I haven't done too many. I'd have to go back, but there's you can put HTML in it, you can put images in it, so you can have these blocks of documentation or instructions, and then you have blocks of code, and then you run the code, and you see the results. So in Python especially, they have a lot of visual features. For example, creating graphs and charts, and so you can kind of get. So what data scientists usually do is kind of create all these little charts to kind of let them get an overview of the data. What's important about this data set? So I will show you at least one of those that I have out in Azure. But if we have time, I'll show you how you can even do those. You can even do those with T-SQL. It's really, really cool. There is another thing with Visual Studio, actually Visual Studio Core, called ML.net, so machinelearning.net. I will be showing you a demo of that today. And the other thing, the main thing that I'm going to talk about today is Azure Machine Learning Designer. I will show you that. This is a way that you can drag and drop the algorithm and have they're calling it a pipeline now. There's also a thing called Azure AutoML. I will not be showing that, and I will tell you you hear this from a lot of speakers this week. Microsoft rolled out a lot of new things. So the demo that I had prepared for you, that I spent a couple of days on a couple weeks ago, making sure it all worked. On Tuesday, I said, I'm going to go through my session. Everything was different. Every single thing. And so, I had to spend Tuesday figuring it all out. And the AutoML, I never did get it to work. So I will not show you that. But in place of that, I will show you the ML.net. So I'm still going to have a demo where it's still automated ML. And what that means, let's see, I probably have more slides that talk about it. But what that means is that instead of trying to figure out what type of algorithm to use, and there are many, many different algorithms that are out there, the ML.net and the Azure AutoML will figure it out for you. They will run the test. So if you can imagine, you have data scientists, and they say, I'm going to try this particular algorithm. This seems to fit. And I can tweak these parameters. That looks pretty good, but maybe I can tweak the parameters a little more. Maybe I can try another algorithm. It's really a manual process. They probably have lots of code where they, save the code and reuse it or whatever. But in this way, we're using, it's kind of crazy, it's really meta. We're using machine learning to figure out our machine learning algorithm for us. It's just really, really, really neat, I think. So this is the new Azure Machine Learning Designer. It is in preview. I'm also going to show you another older thing that's out there that you really can't, I don't believe you can get to unless you already have an account with it. But I will show you because I have some cool things out there, and of course I didn't have time to redo all of my examples, and I do have examples in the new designer, but I didn't have time to do all of them. So I'm going to take you back to the old just to show you what's possible, because what I have in the old way to do it is also possible here if you've got time, to figure it out. The problem with this, and I should have said something at the very beginning, it is white on white. It is hard to see. I will try to zoom in as much as I can, but it is very difficult to see this white on white. The other thing I kind of feel bad about is that you may have tons of questions about this. I may not have all the answers just because I just started playing with this new version of it on Tuesday. And I did spend all day Tuesday. So, but it is still really cool. So I mentioned that there are dozens, I don't know, so many different algorithms, and you may be wondering, like, this particular tool is drag and drop. It's very similar to working with integration services, if anybody here has done that. The drag and drop, set the properties, it's a pipeline, very similar to that. And it's really meant to bring data science and machine learning to everyone. You may know the data. You may know the data very well, but you may not know data science yet. You could go out here, tweak the data, do whatever, and just apply these different algorithms to it. You may think, how will I know which algorithm to use? You kind of get a feel for it, but Microsoft does have went too far. An algorithm cheat sheet, and if you download the slides later, there is a link to this on the resources slide. So don't worry about trying to read it. So basically you start in the middle, first, like what type of problem are you trying to solve? Are you trying to find outliers or anomalies? Are you trying to do a clustering problem? Are you trying to do multi-class classification, two-class classification, or regression? What are you actually trying to accomplish? And then once you figure that out, answer that question, then you look inside the box and, like, for example, the top one with red, it says if you have more than 100 features, or the next one was if you want it to be fast training. So what in the world's a feature? What does that mean? A feature is any of the, like we would call in SQL Server, is like a column, okay? So I have, for every row that I have that I'm going to train the model on, I have a number of attributes, or in this case, they call them features, okay? And the thing we're trying to find is called the label, all right? So previously, there was a way that you could go out and get an absolutely free, account to play with what I've been demonstrating for a couple of years. I don't believe that's available anymore unless you already have an account with that. That was just so cool because you didn't even have to have a credit card. Any of you have Azure accounts now? Where you have to have a credit card. I have one through my MSDN subscription. There's like a $150 limit every month. If I go over, I got to pay. But I was able to create a free account, which I've been using for a couple of years. The new thing in Azure is very similar, but you'll have to create a regular Azure account, and you'll have to provide a credit card. But there is a way, and I thought I put the link there, but I didn't. But you can just go out to Azure and sign up for 12-month free account if you want to go out and play with this. Or if your company has Azure out there already, you could do that. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this. I am starting with the Azure portal. Hopefully most of you are familiar with it. And I am going to go to the machine learning service. And I have a resource group set up already. A resource group is like a container where you can organize all your things in Azure. That way, when I want to delete something, if I delete the resource group, everything's gone, and I'm not leaving little things that I'm getting charged for that I'm not using. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And notice that it says, launch the new Azure Machine Learning Studio. This is that thing that just showed up on Monday. All right. So the really cool thing about this is that once you launch this, I'll go ahead and launch it. It'll open in another tab. Once you launch it, it's meant for the data scientist. This is where the data scientist is going to work. Hopefully it comes up. And on this screen, can you actually create a compute? You can. The idea is that the administrator is going to be working on this side, and that the data scientist will just be working here, because they will have everything they need end-to-end to work in Azure Machine Learning. You know, the administrator might set up their computes, which is basically virtual machines running in the background. So they'll just have this special area where they will work, okay? So let's go to the designer. I'm going to go ahead and try to create one of these. Once I start, in real life, you would run them like after every few steps so that things kind of work. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to run any because it will take too long in a session. What I could do is click on one of these sample ones just to get an idea of what they're like. These are already pre-built. I'm going to go ahead and click to create a new one. And then, so these are called pipelines. And over on the side, I'm going to close that up. Over on the side, I've got to tell it which compute target, so which virtual machines. I'm going to do the fast one. After I learned I needed to make it a little faster. So that's basically virtual machines running in the background. And over on this side, let me see if I have zoom it. Zoom it running. Okay. So over on this side, I have sections for data sets, data input and output, which I believe, I haven't played with that, but that's probably like you might enter parameters and get something back. I'm not really sure. Data transformation. I'm going to tweak my data. So you have two choices. When I'm playing with this, I could go ahead and run some other thing to clean up my data. I've used SSIS. That's the tool I'm comfortable with. There's other things out there. But I might want to go ahead and clean my data up because it might be easier to do in some other tool and get the data ready. What do I mean by clean up? I want to get rid of rows that have lots of empty values, or I might want to manipulate the features. For example, let's say I have body weight. Body weight is, what I might want to do is modify that instead of having 150 pounds, 300 pounds, all that. I might want to modify that so that the values end up between 0 and 1, not this gigantic range. So that's the data transformation. Feature selection, I haven't played with that yet. What I really have played with is the machine learning algorithms. Let me open that up. So we have different sections, like regression. We have a few that we can choose from. And there you can go to the help. Microsoft has got help pages on each of these. For clustering, there's one. classification for multi-class, meaning lots of discrete choices, more than 2. And there we go, the 2 class, true or false, where we're just choosing between 2 things. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I've already uploaded a file. I uploaded this really simple Titanic survival. Everybody's heard of it. It's really simple. And what I'm going to do, let me show you what the data looks like. But I have at least one. Why did I think it was right there? I have one feature that is really not useful, like the name. I don't really think the name is going to make any difference on whether they survived or not. Otherwise, I have, this is the label, this is what we want to predict, and we have a lot of data we already know. Then we have the sex, we have the age, and the passenger class. If I scroll down enough, I'll see a lot of NAs where the age is left out. So I have, as a data scientist, I have to make a decision. Do I want to get rid of those rows? Do I want to maybe come up with a value? Maybe it's the average or the mean, one of those. So I have to make a decision. So the first thing I'm going to do is find my browser. And I'm going to, just because I know it's easier once you get used to this, you kind of know what to look for. I am going to go column selector, drag that over. So what you do then is then you just connect them. And it kind of lights up for you, just drop it in that little thing. So over here, I have to tell it what columns I would really like to use. So once I click on that, this little area over here comes up. I'll click Edit Column and wait. There it goes. And let's see, if I click by name, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click Add All and then remove passenger name. That was quick and easy. Okay, so now I have my columns in my data set. The next thing I'm going to do is remove missing values, clean missing data. Go ahead and drag that in. So I could say if there's anything missing, if there is, a particular value missing, I'm just going to go and say if the, let's see, column names, age. I'm really only caring about age. I think everything else is filled in. And then I have my choice. What would I like to do? I can have a custom substitution value, or I can replace with mean, median, mode, remove entire row. I'm just going to remove the entire row. But I have my choice there. At this point, I would not be able to use a numeric, like the average or mean, because at this point, the feature is being treated as a string. I'd have to change the data type, and there is a edit metadata transform that you can use to do that. I'm just going to leave it like this for now. All right, whenever you work with a supervised machine learning, what you do is you have this data set that you know the answer, right? I said that a little while ago. You have the data set where you know the answer. And you take that data and you split it up. You go ahead and train the model on a percentage of the data. And then you test it on that other part. So when you test it, you do know the answer, but whenever the algorithm is running, it doesn't pay attention to that. It's smart enough to know that. So the next thing I'm going to do is bring up a split data transform. So bring that over and connect it. And there's some other parameters here I could fill out. I'm going to make it 0.8 because this data set is kind of small. The next thing I have to do is come up with my algorithm. A lot of times with this one, if it's 2 class, I just type in 2. I really like, bring that over a little bit, I really like the 2 class boosted decision tree. So I'm going to bring that over. And you can tweak the parameters on it. I'm going to just leave them as they are. A data scientist might have several runs where they use the 2 class boosted decision tree and just modify the parameters. So the next thing I'm going to do is find a thing called train, not the band, the little thingy here, and I connect it up. I connect it up with the algorithm and also with the 80% side will come out on the left. So that's connected. I see a little warning here. That means I've got to fill something out, and the thing I need to fill out is what is the label? What are we trying to figure out? And that is survived. I think I spelled that right. There we go. Survived. The next thing we've got to do is score the model. We're going to take that 20% and see if the algorithm can come up with it. So I'm going to say score. I'm going to come over here. The 20% of data is going to go there. And then let's see. That's going to go there. All right. So let me hit this auto. Is that the auto format? No. Auto layout. Okay. So you have the same pattern. You always have, you're going to split the data, have an algorithm, train it, and score it. And then you can also evaluate it to see how it's good. And what that means is you'll get things like area under the curve at F2, all the information to know whether or not that was a good algorithm to use. And I've got to push this up. Okay, then this should work. All right, it would take too long to run this. So what I'm going to do is go back to Designer and show you one that I created before. I actually created it yesterday. So we can look at kind of the flow of the data and a few of the more things that you can do with this. So here's that CSV. These little green check marks mean that it's already been run. So I ran it yesterday. What I can do is click on this, and I can find out other details about it. But if I click on Outputs and click this little visualize icon, I have to wait for it to load, but I can take a look at the data. So I can see how many rows. I can click on each one. None of these are numeric. I could have changed age to numeric, then I would have gotten mean, all these numbers figure out. But I can get an idea of how spread out the data is, just a first glance. So that's kind of cool. Here's something really interesting. If there's something that you can't figure out how to do or is not possible with all of these drag and drop objects, you can either add Python, R, or SQL. This is not T-SQL. This is this is SQLite from what I understand. So in this case, what I did, let's take a look at this one again. I could use that to modify data. What I did is I just wanted the columns to come up in a different order, the features to come up in a different order. So I just ran this little SQL statement. I can join different data sets together. Each one they would have T1, T2, T3. So I could change those NAs to something else, whatever I want to do. So that is an option. So I like that. Here's the clean missing data. So if we look at the earlier ones, I can't remember how many rows there were. Was it 1,300? 1314. So after the clean missing data, we'll take a look. It should be less because we said to eliminate those rows. It did not, 1314. So it's working differently than I thought it would. So my phone is ringing. I don't want that. The version of it that was out there last week actually eliminated NAs. So what I could do, why don't I come over? Oh, I can't, I'm not going to run this. But what I could do is go on age, I could have like an, when it's NA, change it to a null or something. So I'm going to just ignore that for now. It's always fun presenting the week that Microsoft changes a lot of things. Here's my split data. Talked about that. What I really want to show you, oh, my evaluate is not there. Darn. There's also an evaluate model that somehow is not here. I don't know if I forgot to put it in or what happened. But we can look at this. The outputs. So what this will do is show me, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so that you can see it better. We have all this data. We know whether they survived because we're doing supervised learning. This is that 20% that we're looking at. And the scored label is what the algorithm came up with. So in this case, this was a female in first class. It was very likely, 97% likely, that she survived, and she actually did. So we can compare how well it did. Here is a male with no age. Again, sorry about that. We didn't get those cleaned up. And it was, very unlikely that he would survive, and then he didn't. Here's one that the algorithm thought that she wouldn't survive because she was in third class, but yet she did. But see, it was very close. So this is one of those that's very close to the line, but not quite. What I'm missing here, and there's no way I can add it because it would just take 5 minutes for the virtual machine to warm up and everything. Let's go back. Control 4. Is that, and maybe if I look, I've got another one. Oh, I do have one. I can show you. Let's go back to the pipe. These are called pipelines. And the old thing, they were called experiments, Titanic 2 models. Here's one I believe I can show you, the evaluation. So here's a case where I have, let's close that up. Nope, wish I had more room. I have 2 different algorithms that I'm checking, a 2-class boosted decision tree and a 2-class decision forest. So I'm checking both of those, and then I have this evaluate model that I can compare to see which one was better than the other. So when I click that one and go to outputs, I can look at the area under the curve. So here's the positive rate. That is not even the area under the curve. So the blue line is on the left side of the experiment, and the red is the right. And here's the precision recall curve. The older version of this had an area under the curve, is what it had. So I can see which, if I'm an insurance company, what I might be concerned about is how many false positives there were. How many people actually died when our algorithm said they should survive? Because that's going to cost me money, right? I'm going to have to pay out. So this is called now my head is forgetting what it's called, a confusion matrix? Is that what it is? My head's saying decision matrix, and that's not right. I believe it's something like a confusion matrix. So the data scientist in the room, what's that called? Are you comparing the trues and falses? He's not going to tell me. Okay. So what I'm concerned about is that they actually died, which is this row. Let's see. They died, but 43 of them we thought were going to survive. So what I might do is say, okay, 43, but if I switch over to the other one, only 30. So it might be that I decide to go with the second algorithm because of that, or I even might want to tweak my threshold a little bit, okay? So that's the new Azure Machine Learning Designer. I want to show you real quick the old one that had been available. This is what I've been, now it's called Classic. You know, it's going away, which is really sad because I love it. I really hate that. This is the older, it's similar but not the same, but I have some things that I really wanted to show you so that you could see the kind of things that are possible, but it just was impossible for me to actually make it happen this week. So here's one that is an R script that takes some book reviews. These are book reviews from Amazon, and this is the older one, so don't take notes on this one. I just want to show you, what's available. And is it going to take forever? So it's got, this paragraph book reviews, and there is I'm only going to look at a sample of the data. There's a special object here, extract key phrases from text, and here's the execute R script. So when I visualize this is so cool. I get, I believe it's like a word cloud. So book was the most commonly used word. That's kind of not helpful. I wonder if there's a way we can leave the word book out. But anyway, so that's kind of cool. So this just kind of shows you the power of using R or Python along with this drag and drop interface. You can do whatever you need to do. I'm also going to show you a notebook. Again, something I really didn't have time to put together. Let's see. This one is from an article that is out on Simple Talk. So this is just me following the examples. So in this case, I think does she just have code? This is a case where she just has code, and all this is just importing the data, and here's the data. You can view it, and eventually here's a graph. So this particular article where this came from was showing you how to get started with notebooks and data science. So here's this is, the cool thing about this data set is that we have the data for movies, how much they spent and how much they made at the box office. And so if you have a certain budget for your movie, you might be able to predict how much money you're going to make. I really think there's more to it than that, but that's the idea behind this. So eventually you can come up with your line. So, but I'm going to see if I can find another better one. The diabetes classification is a good one. Come on. And the cool thing with notebooks is that you can copy them out and give them to somebody else, and they still see that if you run it ahead of time, they can still see all the results of the code, or they can run it themselves. So here's a case where you have the markdown cell. So you have two kinds of cells, markdown and code. So the cool thing with this is that here's the data. So what they're worried about is when they have someone with diabetes who is discharged from the hospital, how likely they are to come back after, before a month's out. How the I can't say the word, recidivism rate, something like that. So anyway, here's this code, goes in a loop to somewhere, it goes in a loop to look at every feature and do comparisons, all these histograms, so you can kind of get an idea of which features are really important, okay? So this is the type of thing that a data scientist would do up front when they get a data set. So I'm not going to show you anything more in this classic version because you're really not going to be able to go out there and use it as far as I know, unless you already have an account. I'm going to go back here. And did I show you everything? I think I showed you everything I want to show you here. There is this, I'm just going to run through the steps of the automated machine learning just to show you what it's like. I have not gotten it to work yet. I did try quite a bit. Let's go back to this. Automated ML. And I'll just show you how easy it is to set up. However, I'm just not really getting it to work. I did see one. So all you do is you select your data set, in this case, Titanic Survival. I'm going to go to Next. And I'm going to experiment, and this is a record of every time I run it. So I'm just going to call it Pass Demo. I've got to give it, even though I'm not going to do it. What is it that I'm looking for? I'm looking for Survived. I have to choose a particular compute node. AML2 is my bigger compute. And I'll click Next. Then I have to tell it, is it a classification? Is it some deep learning, regression, time series? This is a classification. I'm going to go to additional configuration settings, and I might decide, what is more important here. Maybe I'm going to say area under the curve is more important. If there's any algorithms that belong to this that I don't want them to test, I can add it here. And let's look at validation. I might say that I want it to be, I'm not even sure I necessarily understand all of these, but if you do more, you could pick which one. I'm going to save that and go to View Featurization Settings. So here, I can say, I really don't think you should look at passenger name. It's going to be a unique value on every single row. We don't want that. And I can go ahead and tell it that age is numeric. So save that and finish. So what it will do is apply, it will go ahead and run many different algorithms, and you can run it. It takes at least an hour to run. That was the lowest that it would let me do. We definitely don't have time for that. I'm not sure where training time, 3 hours. That's the default. But what I found was the minimum was 1 hour. So what it will do is try to figure out which features are most important, which ones need to be weighted, clean up, do some cleanup of the data, like the missing rows, things that don't make sense. So anyway, I wanted to show you that. However, like I said, we're not going to run it, but I just want to kind of show you the steps just to see how it works. I think it's pretty neat. What I do want to show you is another way that you can do this. For example, I just heard from a friend of mine who does a lot of Power BI. Power BI will hook up into automated machine learning. Not sure if it hooks up directly to this or exactly what the nuts and bolts are, but I thought that was pretty cool. For a while now, maybe more than a year, there has been, let me go back to my slides. Do I have anything more? Oh, I didn't go through this slide. Let me just show you this slide that kind of explains automated machine learning. I showed you this part of it. Oh, you can't see my mouse, can you? Under the little person on the left, that's what I showed you. When you run this, it will tweak the parameters, it'll test all these different algorithms, and it'll come up with a training score, 50%, 95%, whatever, and then it'll tell you which one is better. Then what you can do is download the Python code, and I believe you could also deploy it as a web service as well, because you can deploy the other things. let me show you another thing. I just thought of something else out here. I'm going to go to, not pipelines, endpoints. So if you go out and if you run your pipeline, build it, everything looks good, then there's like just a couple of clicks to create an endpoint that you can use to call it with your data and get an answer back, okay? I have not done that yet. However, here's where I played around with it a little bit. I'm going to go to Publish Pipelines. I'm going to click here. And what it does is gives you the C# Python and R code that you can use to call the web service. So I think that is really, really cool that it gives you that. All right, so let's get back to the next thing I want to show you. I've got a virtual machine where I have Visual Studio running. So this came out, I'm not sure exactly when, ML.net, stands for machinelearning.net. And what I need to do, this is really simple, it's not a real long drawn out thing. I am going to create a new project, a console app. And did I click? I never know, do I need to click it again? Oh, this is the new interface. I don't click it again, I click next. Okay. I'm just going to call it Pass ML Demo. No, yeah, let's just do it. Who cares? And there's a reason I'm saying that. I probably want to give this a better name, and I'll show you why in a minute. But for this is okay. It's creating the project, and there's some add-ins. You have to go out and install, not really add-ins, they don't call it anymore, they call it extensions. There's an extension for machine learning. So this is just the little program it created, just this little Hello World program. But what I do is right-click, and I do not want to upgrade today. No, thank you. Right-click on the project, go to Add Machine Learning. And they call it sentiment analysis for the 2 categories. So I'm going to click that one. I am going to browse to my file, which is right there, same file we've been playing with. I am going to select the label that I would like to predict, which is survived. I would like to say, no, don't look at passenger name. And there's some sample data. The next step is to train the model. And in this case, it gives me seconds. I'm going to just put it 20 seconds and then click Start Training. So this is very similar to what I showed you a minute ago where we went through that little wizard, except this time I'm going to be able to show you the results because it will not take an hour. It's only going to take about 20 seconds. And this, as far as I know, this didn't get updated, but maybe it did, and I'm not going to download a new version. So it should be getting done pretty quickly. Obviously, the longer you run this, you don't want to run it forever, but you will get better results if you run it longer, I would think. And so that is done. So the best accuracy was 79%, which is not really great, but that's fine for what we're doing. And we go to Evaluate. Evaluate is just telling us, and I got to start zoom on the VM. I think I've already got it running, now that I think about it. It just tells you the different algorithms that were tested. The longer you give it, the more algorithms it will check, and area under the curve, etc. And the next part, we click this code button and click Add Projects, and it will add 2 projects to the application. One of them is like a demo. We can demo it, and one of them is the model itself. So what I'm going to do is I already have some code ready. I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to go over to that Hello World that we saw at the beginning and just get rid of everything there, and I'm going to paste it in. So, and I'm going to zoom in. So we have to, I can't see the using, there's a special using. So in this case, it's, let's see, oh, I need to change this at the top to pass ML demo. Every place I see console app ML, I need to change it to pass ML demo. So I'm going to do that. So obviously, it would be much better to, and hope that doesn't like that either. What is my class? Oh, demo ML. Okay. Let's try that, see if it likes that one better. That likes that better. Okay, so the problem is I should have named this something like Titanic Survival. You know, you wouldn't just come up with like past demo. I am going to go ahead and run it. I've got my fingers crossed that the demo gods look kindly upon me today. And, oh, I'll show you the code again in a minute. So in this case, I have a passenger named John Smith, who is a male, age 7, in first class. It predicted that John would survive. So let me just show you the code really quickly. You have to refer to your model over here. And in this case, I've just got it hard-coded inside the app. You would, return or supply the data in whatever way. You know, maybe fill a form out, or if you're using a console, ask questions. Just to make it simple, I've got it hard-coded here. And then run this predict function, and then you get your answers back. So if I change this to a male, age 50, in third class, chances are he will not survive. So we will run this and see what it says. So, John Smith, a 50-year-old in third class, we don't predict him to survive. So that's really all to show you there. I have gone too fast because I've got like 13 minutes left, and I am at the end of what I can show you. Let's see if I've got anything else out here. Again, fill out the session evals. I hope you learned something today and maybe inspired some of you to go out there and play with this. I really love it. If I didn't have like the best job in the world at Redgate, I would be all over this. I have a bunch of resources for you. So if you go out and download the slides, I've turned the slides into Pass. They're available out there probably already. You can go out and get all of these links. However, I said if I had some time at the end, I was going to show you the SQL Server notebook. Didn't I say that? Anybody like to see that? Yes. Okay. So there is a new thing called Azure Data Studio. And Azure Data Studio is, the reason behind Azure Data Studio is that you can run it on Linux, if you have a Linux notebook, or you can run it on a Mac, and then you can connect to SQL servers. They don't have to be in the cloud. They can be in your network or locally. So I'm just going to close that. And it's really cool because it's very, very extensible. I am going to connect. I don't want to connect to my DB in the cloud. I'm going to connect to, let's see, connections. I have just played with this a little bit. There we go. New connection, and I'm going to just go local SQL 2017, and connect and see if that works. Oh, there they were up there. I love Management Studio, but I have to say there are some very, very cool things in Azure Data Studio, like the notebooks. There's also an add-in you can get that lets you run a query and then just click a button and you can get all kinds of visualizations from it. A network-related error. Does not like my local SQL server. Try it again. There we go. So I know I have notebooks installed here. Let me see if I can just find, well, there we go, new notebook. So you can, and I'm connected to SQL, so you have a kernel that you connect to. And the kernel is, what I've got is different versions of Spark or Python, and there might be updates out there that I don't have yet. I know that this week they were talking about running PowerShell in a Python notebook. So what I do is click on text, and I don't remember all the things, but I know like plus is I don't remember all the markdown codes, but plus I believe is like a bulleted list. And so when I click away, I know what I did. I need to have a dot, or space, I'm sorry. Space, there we go. So that's a bulleted list. There's some other things you can do. You can put HTML in it. If I click code, and what database am I connected to? Let's just do this. Select. See, I've got IntelliSense there. Star from sys tables. I don't even know. And then I run it. And so what in the world? I'm probably in master. So I'm just going to scroll down and add another one and just say use AdventureWorks 2017 and run that one. And then add another one. And now let's say select star from person. Oops, not person, precision. There it goes. So what you could do, I mean, if you train anyone or you want to have some kind of run books, you could put a lot of information in the little text areas and then have the code there that someone could just run. Or if you just want to show them the results or something, you can, as long as they've got Azure Data Studio and the extension for notebooks, I believe you have to have an extension, you could just hand this off to someone else. They don't even have to have a SQL Server running. Now, if they don't have a SQL to connect to, they're not going to be able to run it, but they could look at the results that you had. So I think it's really, really cool. I teach a lot. I want to start putting my training materials in notebooks so I can have my students just try things. Yes? Yeah, and this room is so large, I can't hear you at all. Is there any way you can come up a little bit? And then I can maybe hear you better.
Can we connect to Oracle database servers through this?
Can we do what with our?
Connect to Oracle?
Connect to Oracle with Azure Data Studio. Okay, so with the new Polybase feature, you could, with the new Polybase feature. I don't think it's a feature of SQL Server 2017 and 2019 where you can set up, it's kind of like a link server, but you're using Polybase, and then you attach tables, and then you can treat those tables, it's called external tables. So look into the Polybase. There's probably a lot of information out there since they announced a lot of things this week. But that's a feature of SQL Server. I don't believe this will connect directly. This will connect to Postgres, and SQL Server now. Now, in the future, I can guess that we'll start connecting to even more things. Okay, great question. All right, so any more questions? All right, I am going to bring this resource slide. I have some business cards up here that you can contact me if you have some questions or want some advice about this. Like I said, if I didn't have like the amazing dream job that I have, I would be all over this. This is what I really wanted to do. But when this editing job came up, I'm like, that is so cool. So anyway, thank you so much for attending today, and good luck, and enjoy the rest of the day. This is it. We're almost done. Thank you very much.